Hello and welcome to CapacityTV. Today I'm joined by Tesh from Ascom. Welcome, Tesh.
Thank you.
Could you explain the impact that traffic patterns have had on operators OSS and BSS?
Oh, absolutely. So what happens in the wholesale space, which is quite interesting, is that what people are trying to do is make the optimum amount of money out of the traffic distribution they have at that particular moment in time. And what that means is that as traffic comes in, most people would say the more traffic I got, the better it is type thing. Not necessarily the case in the wholesale game. Typically, most carriers, when you think of it today, have maybe 20 ways to get from, let's say, New York to Hong Kong. And in those 20 ways, you've got 20 different price points, you've got 20 different levels of service. And within those 20 operators, the prices keep changing every single day. When you have a situation like this, and let's say your first route goes down, where you spend most of your traffic, and you have a great price point, and you have great quality of service, that going down and having an excess amount of traffic overflowing to routes that really are not profitable, can make you go from positive some dollars to negative a lot of dollars very quickly. You multiply that by the, give or take, 20 to 70,000 destinations in the world that most carriers route to, and you understand that any little move in traffic distribution makes an impact, a financial impact to the bottom line. Everyone's OSSs and BSSs have to actually take this into account. And they were all built for after the fact processing. What we're looking at is how do you make yourself nimble and quick to be able to actually take advantages to nuances that are happening in the market as sort of the market goes up and down within your network. So the goal again is how do I get the biggest bang for my dollar given the traffic that's being presented to the network at that particular moment in time. And that's where it's changed from looking at things on a monthly basis, weekly basis, or even a daily basis.
What differentiates legacy systems from next-gen platforms?
I'm glad you asked that. The wholesale voice business has always been a legacy business. It's been around since all of us have been around. We've all picked up a phone and made a long-distance call from point A to point B. What's happened is, what's interesting is that all the OSS and BSS platforms for the voice business, especially for the wholesale business, were written 15 plus years ago. The original code for all of this was 15 plus years ago. So let's take an example of what we think is big. Voice, in my opinion, was always the first big data application. Well, it's not even considered big data today, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it was a big data application where we had legacy systems to deal with, so we thought it was a big deal. So let's take a look at, there's 500 billion minutes in the world. Let's give or take, a few billion. And two operators have 10% of that. One is Tata, one is Vodafone, both at 10% each. When you take a look at that, we're talking, let's say billions of CDRs. That's not big data. Big data is when Adobe goes out to market, and Adobe actually looks at 1 trillion transactions per day that they actually boil down to 24 million billable transactions. That's big data. And what happens now is that we have OSSs and BSSs, and actually we have technologies today that addresses the needs of real-time ability to actually move traffic around the network, to do your rating at a call-by-call basis where you actually can calculate your margins on a call-by-call basis, to understand what are the dial code discrepancies between carriers and so on. We have the ability to do that real-time today with the technologies today. What's happened, the difference between legacy and next gen, the next gen stuff just started out a couple of years ago. If you're past the last couple of years, you're considered legacy. And interestingly enough, telcos being a delivery mechanism for next gen services are the shoemaker's children, because their OSS and BSS are stuck in the 1990s, 2000s. So that's where I look at the differences between next gen and legacy platforms in the OSS, BSS place, especially on the telco side of the house.
Describe what is meant by the art of interconnect.
The art of interconnect, what happens is, and it's actually the title of a paper I wrote a long time ago, but it hasn't changed. The wholesale game is a relationship game, first of all. If I'm sitting in, let's say, Indonesia, and you're sitting in the UK, and we have an agreement, a handshake, a gentleman's handshake, you're going to send me X amount of minutes, I'm going to send you X amount of minutes. And at the end of the day, you owe me $5 million, $10 million, whatever it is, or let's say I owe you $5 to $10 million. And at the end of the day, if I say, I'm not going to pay, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. You're going to come sue me in Indonesia, it's not going to happen. That being said, there's a certain amount of, you'll see that this is one of the industries where the faces don't change, people stay in the same businesses, there's a lot of trust involved. So the art of interconnect happens is that when you take prices going up and down, you take organizations where you got carrier relations whose actually main thought or main goal in life is actually decrease cost of sale. You got the sales organizations trying to make as much money as I can. You've got the finance organization that's saying, listen, I want responsible revenue. I'm not going to forsake one for the other. You've got situations, let's give you just a small example. Let's say that we had a bilateral in place between us where you're going to send me 5 countries worth of traffic, I'm going to send you 7 countries worth of traffic. In this particular situation, we've negotiated a deal whereby on a country by country basis, there are certain countries I'm going to lose money on and certain countries you're going to lose money on, but I'm going to make it up on the other destinations. Well, these are great things to put together, but financially they're very difficult to track. So when our CFO comes down and sits down and says, hey, we lost money ABC, Mr. Account Manager or Mr. whoever's running carrier relations, why do we do that? Think about how much work you got to go through to backtrack why you actually put that deal in place. This is where there's an art to interconnect, right? And what happens is, let's say, and I'll give you another example. I have a situation where I'm in a penalty situation with you. I promised you 1 million minutes to ABC country. I only made 500,000. Well, I got a situation in the marketplace where I got to fill that up, or I'm going to have to pay you a penalty anyways. So I owe you, let's say, a sender pay situation. I'm going to go out to the market, drop my prices below market price to actually fill up and actually make maybe half my money back. Again, that's an art form. So when we talked about originally, how do I squeeze the most profit out of my network given the traffic distribution that's presented to me at the time, and then the art of actually getting the perfect traffic mix. That's what I call the art of interconnect. So it's half math, which is a lot of math that goes on in the background, but it's half art form in actually deploying that, and that's done every single day. And that's why some of the people that you see in this business have been here for donkeys of years, and because this is experience, and this is what we call the art of interconnect.
What challenges do you see within the wholesale arena at the moment?
Given that it is a legacy business and people have been doing it for so long in the same way, that when you come in and say, listen, I got a different, smarter, faster, better way of doing things, they're not as open. So what I find is that as they move from legacy OSS, BSS platforms to actually platforms that were meant for this type of application today, that shift in thinking is probably the most important thing. The handshake between you and me is passé. We got a better, faster way of doing things. We should be able to reorganize our networks on the fly. We should be able to see our every call that goes through our network today. We should be able to calculate margins on a call-by-call basis. We need that information not tomorrow, not 2 hours from now. We need that within minutes, and we need to make decisions on that within minutes. I think that's the shift. That's the challenge that carriers have today, because in the data world and so on, they do this today. That's how they do business. It's the equivalent, and I like to use this analogy. If I were to take your phone, if I were to ask you, what phone did you use 10 years ago? Could you tell me?
Nokia or Siemens?
Or some phone, but it may or may not have been a smartphone. It would have been first-gen smartphone, potentially. It makes a call. It does SMS. It does a lot of things you do today. Would you use that phone today?
No.
That's exactly how the telco's got to think of this business. Everything is moved. There's a better, faster, smarter way of doing this business, and that's what they got to embrace. And hopefully, if they address that, you'll see this go from a business where everyone's complaining about margins going down, revenues going down, costs going down, to a business where there's actually even more voice minutes out there. How do we do this efficiently so we do make a profitable business out of it, and it won't be this situation where it's a legacy business. And those are some of the challenges that we see that operators today have, and hopefully they'll address it with looking to new technologies as everyone else has around them.
And how is Ascom addressing some of those challenges?
Well, we're in a unique position because one of the things we did is a lot of our technologies have been developed over the last couple of years. And what we did is that we got into the market with operators telling us, here are the challenges that we're facing. We've got the ability when rates and dial codes and all these things happen. Just to give you a small example, if you take a typical operator that's connected to 100 different operators in the world to do their business, they typically go between, give or take 2 billion individual dial code analysis per month, given all the rate sheets that come in. Again, not a huge number in the big data world, but a significant number when you're trying to do things manually. We have the ability to take a look at bilateral agreements that can get very, very complex, where you're swapping 17 destinations for my 10 destinations, and there's different dial code discrepancies between us and so on. that's where we play. And we bring this together, not based on the way of looking at things in the past, but based on big data principles and how we look at things today. So what happens is what people thought was difficult before, we make very simple today. But we even actually make it even more simple. And we make it to the point where it's 100% correct 100% of the time. And that's what Ascom sort of brings to the market right now. And that's a complete OSS, BSS sort of solution that goes from end to end to fit the wholesale arena.
Thank you for joining us today on Capacity TV.
Well, thank you for having me.